Hello everyone, it's Crash Knife Fight, and today I want to talk about Jedi Fallen Order. Just in case you have not been following the news on this upcoming game, Jedi Fallen Order is a new action-adventure Star Wars game being developed by Respawn Entertainment and will be published by Electronic Arts. It's slated for release November 15th of this year for PC, Xbox One, and the PS4. The past weekend at EA Play in Los Angeles, the developers revealed a nice big chunk of gameplay for fans, and I wanted to throw out a few opinions and comments about what we know and what we have seen thus far. So I'm going to start with some of the positives, then the negatives, and finally some general comments. So let's start with the upside. For starters, I have some confidence in the developer. If you're unfamiliar with Respawn, they are the team behind the Titanfall games and Apex Legends. Prior to the creation of Respawn, its founders and many of its employees were working for Infinity Ward and were responsible for the first handful of Call of Duty titles. I have never been much of a COD fan, but I really enjoyed Titanfall 2, and while that game is largely devoted to the online multiplayer experience, the game did include an incredible single-player campaign that many critics raved about. The only issue I had with it was its brevity. So Respawn has put some quality games out that have been well received by players and critics. And while the company itself is rather young, they can boast about having quite a lot of experience, and hopefully they can recapture some of that same magic put into the Titanfall 2 single-player mode for Jedi Fallen Order. Another positive is the time frame in which the game is set. This new title takes place after Order 66 during the Jedi Purge, and during the early years of the Galactic Empire. I have not heard or seen the exact year this takes place, but press releases and interviews state that our protagonist, Cal Kestis, is one of the last remaining Jedi, which indicates that perhaps a few years may have passed since the end of the Clone Wars and Emperor Palpatine's Order 66 command. Nevertheless, the upside to this is that it's an era of Star Wars yet to be explored in a video game. Comic books and novels have delved into this time period, and the animated series Star Wars Rebels deals with some of the aspects of the Jedi Purge later in the life of the Galactic Empire. But this will be somewhat of a new and welcome experience for gamers. On this same note, we will see some locations yet to be explored in Star Wars video games, namely Maigito and Umbara. Maigito makes a brief appearance in the Revenge of the Sith, as it's the location of the Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi's assassination by the clone troopers at the onset of Order 66, while Umbara is the setting for several episodes of the Clone Wars animated series in its 4th season. I'm particularly interested in seeing Umbara because it was one of the more unique locations in the Clone Wars series, and it's going to be interesting to see how that's brought to life in the video game. We can also expect to see some familiar characters in the game. In the gameplay reveal, for instance, we encounter Saw Gerrera, voiced by Forrest Whitaker, and I don't think anyone would be surprised to see Darth Vader or the Emperor turn up at some point during the game, but that's just speculation for now. Some other notable positives here are that the game looks good in terms of graphics, and from an audio standpoint, when I heard of the original score, it sounds very much like the style of John Williams. So all in all, I feel that this game will deliver a genuine immersive Star Wars experience. Now let's move on to some of the negatives. First off, it's being developed by Respawn Entertainment. I know I just lauded them with praise for their previous titles, but an exclusively single-player game and a Star Wars title to boot is a new venture for them. I'm keeping my fingers crossed and hoping that they can sustain what they captured in the Titanfall 2 single-player campaign into a full-length title. Also, because Respawn elected to develop this game and Apex Legends, they declined to develop another Titanfall title, which is a bit of a personal disappointment for me. Another drawback is that this appears to be a linear game in the style of the Uncharted and Tomb Raider titles. In and of itself, that is not necessarily a bad thing, but what I have seen of the gameplay thus far, barring the wall-running aspects, there's not a lot of new. We saw running, jumping, climbing, swinging from ropes, possibly some stealth elements, but nothing that new and interesting. I'm hoping that we will see more use of force powers to help Cal traverse terrain in the full release of the game, and possibly some interesting uses of his droid BD-1 that could help set it apart from other action games. Also, because of its linear nature and exclusively single-player content, I'm questioning the replay value of the game. Once I complete the main story, what will be left to do? Will we be possibly getting some DLC at some point, or will I be trading this in for $5 at GameStop? What also makes me nervous is that this is being published by EA, and they always seem to find a way to muck things up. I'm hoping they learned their lesson when it comes to Star Wars titles after the fallout from the launch of Star Wars Battlefront 2. Unfortunately, their track record since then is pretty spotty. So there is the give and take. At the very least, I believe this game will appeal to the more passionate Star Wars fans because of the time period it's set and how it will add to the larger Star Wars universe. Hopefully we will be getting some more gameplay and get more news over the next few months before the game's launch. Now just a few general comments and a little bit of speculation. Let's start with the force powers we see Cal use. Nothing new here. We see the tried and true force push and deflecting blaster bolts with the lightsaber. But then we also see Cal using a saber throw and a freeze reminiscent of Kylo Ren, which are flirting with dark side abilities. Even when Cal pulls a trooper towards him and reams the poor soul with a lightsaber, seems beyond the pale for a Jedi. I'm wondering if this will be addressed somehow in the game. Will we see Cal struggling with the pull of the dark side? Will there be some type of dual-sided skill tree that will allow the player to unlock various abilities? Perhaps one set that is more common to the light side, and another more attuned to the dark side. And could that possibly alter the story in some way? Since this story will be canon, what happens to Cal in the long run? We do not encounter him anywhere else, so what will be his fate? All we know about the story at this point is that Cal reveals himself as a Force user, which draws the attention of the Inquisitors, and he gets involved with Saw Gerrera. So I'm hoping that the writers tie this up in a way that doesn't convolute what is already known about this time period. Also, as I mentioned earlier, what characters will we see pop up in the game? I can't imagine that Respawn will pass up an opportunity to put Vader in the game, but is it possible we may see some other recognizable characters? Since this seems to be rather early on in the Galactic Empire, could we possibly encounter some familiar clone troopers from the animated series? What about a young Kanan Jarrus, or even Boba Fett? Taking everything into consideration, I am cautiously optimistic about this game. I think at the very least we will get an interesting new story to add to the Star Wars universe. At the best, we could see a game that perhaps may not be that original, but collects all of the aspects of an action game and the Star Wars universe, and delivers them in a well-polished, engrossing package. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for new content.